Hello, everybody. This is Mike from the On the Stack podcast at iceworm.org/magic and at Stack Show on Twitter. This week's Magic video, we're taking a look at my mono red Goblin deck. So we take a look at the lands. We have 24 lands. So being a mono deck, mountains are all we need. We have 24 of them. We're going to move into our creatures. We have one Goblin Balloon Brigade. So 1/1 for 1 red. And you can also pay a red to give it flying until the end of turn. We have 3 Goblin Elite Infantry. It's a 1 and a red for a 2/2. The downside is it gets a -1/-1 if it blocks or becomes blocked. So basically it becomes a 1/1 then. We have 2 Goblin Skycutters for 1 and a red. It's a 2/1, and you can sacrifice it to deal 2 damage to target creature with flying, and the creature also loses flying until the end of turn. So that's a good way to make something lose flying, or if your opponent has a flyer that is toughness 2 or less, you can use this to get rid of it. We have one Mog Fanatic, another 1/1 for 1, and I can sacrifice it to deal 1 damage to a target creature or player. And one of the stars of the deck is the Mud Button Torch Runner. He is 2 colorless, 1 red for a 1/1, and when it dies, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So when you attack with this, people are going to be hesitant to block it. And we'll also get back to this card a little bit later in the video to tell you how it works with this deck and why it's a great card for this deck. We have 4 Raging Goblins, the classic 1/1 for 1 red with haste, so it can attack the turn it comes into play. And we have 1 Thick-Skinned Goblin, which is just a 2/1 Goblin for 2 mana. And we're going to move into our instance. We have 1 Incinerate, just to deal 3 damage to something. It's a good way to remove something that has toughness 3 or less, or deal 3 damage to your opponent directly. We have 2 Lightning Blasts, which deal 4 damage to target creature or player. I have 1 Lightning Bolt to deal 3 damage to something. And we have 4 Shocks to deal 2 damage to something. And the Shock, and all of these you can use on your opponent's turn, so I like Shock to, when people attack, I can throw Shock down and deal 2 damage to a creature. If it's toughness 2 or less, it'll die. And into our sorceries, I have 2 Blaze, and the Blaze deals X damage to a creature or player. So since you have 24, you can get these spells up to do quite a bit of damage. I ended up having one of these in a game go off for 10 damage one time. We have 2 Empty the Warrens, which gives you 2 1/1 red goblins. And the nice thing about this card is it has Storm. So what Storm does is it allows you to copy this card for every spell you played before it. So for example, if you were to tap 1 mana and put out a Raging Goblin for 1 mana, and then tap 4 more mana and play this, instead of getting 2 1/1s, you would get 4 1/1s because it copies the spell. So every spell you play before it, it gets copied with the Storm ability. We have 2 Fireballs, another spell you can get up to do a lot of damage because it deals X damage to any, and you can divide it evenly, rounded down among any number of creatures or players. So you can say you have X is 8, you can do 4 damage to your opponent and 4 damage to something else, or you can do, if you have a lot of tokens, you could do 1 damage to everything and all that, except it does cost 1 more to cast for each target beyond it. That's kind of like what the Strive ability became later on in the game. We have the star of the deck, though, for sorceries is the Goblin Grenade. It's a 1 red mana, and at additional cost, you have to sacrifice a goblin. What this does when it resolves, it deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Now remember how we were talking about that Mud Button Torch Runner. You combine the Goblin Grenade and you sacrifice the Torch Runner to now you do 5 damage from the grenade, and Mud Button Torch Runner, when it dies, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So you can deal 8 damage with a combo of the Mud Button Torch Runner and the Goblin Grenade. You can also use the Goblin Grenade on these other goblins as well, but it works better with the Torch Runner because its ability causes 3 additional damage. And finally, we have 2 Spitting Earth. We have these come in and they do damage equal to the number of mountains you control. So if you have 8 mountains, this thing does 8 damage to a creature. And back onto the sorceries, we have 2 of these. Just for the numbering, we have 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 fireballs, 4 goblin grenades, and 2 spinning earth. We're going to go through the deck just one more time to let you know the quantities of these cards. We got 24 mountains, 1 goblin balloon brigade, 3 goblin elite infantries, 2 goblin skycutters, 1 Mog Fanatic, 4 Mud Button Torch Runners, 4 Raging Goblins, 1 Thick-Skinned Goblin. In instance, we have 1 Incinerate, 2 Lightning Blasts, 1 Lightning Bolt, 4 Shocks, and the sorceries we have 2 Blaze, 2 Empty the Warrens, 2 Fireballs, 4 Goblin Grenades, and 2 Spinning Earths. I really like this deck. It's a lot of fun to play. It's pretty fast, and with the X damage sorceries like Blaze and Fireball, you can do a lot of damage with those. And then, of course, the Goblin Grenade combo with the Mud Button Torch Runner makes it a pretty fun deck. I want you to thank you all for watching. If you like this, you can go to iceworm.org/magic and listen to the On the Stack podcast. And you can also tweet the On the Stack podcast on Twitter at StackShow. StackShow, all one word on Twitter. And I want to thank you all for watching, and take care.